Kia ora and welcome to this week's episode of a special Flying Kiwis niche cast where we are going to be chatting through Kiwi football business. Just a whole bunch of Kiwi football. Flying Kiwis are everywhere around the world doing fantastic things. So we'll chat our way through them from Chris Wood in the Prem, Sarpreet Singh in Germany. We've got a bunch of kids playing in the Danish Division 1. Little dude by the name of Ballinio as well. We got Kiwis in America, and we got Kiwis, men and women, in the Champions League as well. So big it up to all of them. Big it up to yourself. Love yourself, kia kaha. We are here to broadcast Aotearoa Sporting Excellence, and you can support that directly on Patreon. Shout out to our patrons. You can head over to the niche cache or patreon.com/L niche cache, EL niche cache, and join up there. We do a Monday and Friday email, all the niche cache goodness straight to your email inbox. That is the nichecache.substack.com. We are on Instagram at the niche, as well as Twitter at the niche cache. And of course, we are always writing about Kiwi sports at www.theniche-cache.com. Wildcard. You got any mindfulness for us? We're going to do a double banger recording session today with the Flying Kiwis, then the Kiwi NRL podcast as well. So do you have a bunch of mindfulness to share with us?
Bunch of mindfulness. This comes from a familiar source, Mr. Ram Dass. I was watching there's like a thing on Netflix, like a half-hour like mini documentary about him towards the end of his life there. And I was watching that and I just got just had my notepad out going ping, 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 ping. One I'll use for this one, nice and short and sharp, quote goes, "God comes to the hungry in the form of food."
What comes to the hungry in the form of food?
God does. God
does.
Comes to the hungry in the form of food.
God comes to the hungry in the form of food. That is true. That is very true. And that's a steady theme here. God is ever present. God is yourself. God is the trees, the land of Aotearoa. And as you're telling us there, God is the kai that we eat. Righto. That's a great start. Let's start our footballing chat in the Premier League with a big man, the big Matua, Chris Wood. I think he from the Waikato region, wildcard?
I think so. I know he played a little bit of he played in Auckland as well growing up for a bit, but I think mostly from the Waikato. He definitely played for but not before it was Hamilton Wanderers and Melville and whatever in the National League. I think when they had Bob, I think he might have played a bit for them. This is going back a while before I was covering it full time though.
Are we talking like going back to when Adam Milne was playing for Wairarapa Bush, or before then?
Similar time, because Chris Wood was at West Brom by the time he was like 17 and he's been in England ever since. So we're talking like when he was a middle teenager.
Rightio. Nice work. Well, in the Premier League, Burnley have lost their first two games. Obviously, we do give a fuck about Burnley because we love Memphis Grizzlies with Steven Adams. So we love a bit of Burnley here at the Niche Cache, but they don't seem to be very good, wildcard. So with all due respect to the Burnos out of Burnley, let's focus on Chris Wood. What's Chris Wood doing for this team? What's he like? How does he fit in? Are they shit because of him? Or is Chris Wood kind of helping them along?
Well, I think when they start winning games, it'll be because of him more than anything. Like he's they got a solid defense. You sort of know how a Sean Dyche team is going to play. Very like sturdy, very pretty like rigid, quite direct, and they're going to be hard as nails. And that was kind of the theme when they played Liverpool on the weekend. And Liverpool were just better. Like Liverpool have much more talent across the park in almost every position, and they won that game fairly comfortably. Burnley played well, but like you need to do better than play well to overcome that talent gap. And Jurgen Klopp afterwards, one of the main talking points of that, because it was a pretty routine like result, but one of the main talking points afterwards was Jurgen Klopp having a bit of a moan about the way that like Because apparently there's one of those very like NRL type referee instructions to like change the interpretation of some of these things, like the fouls they're trying to loosen up, allow play to continue a little bit more. And Jurgen Klopp had a bit of a complaint saying that the way that Wood and Barnes were playing against his centre backs was dangerous and whatever. And everyone else has had a bit of a laugh about that because Burnley apparently in that game equaled a Premier League record for the longest time without a yellow, well, there were no yellow cards in the entire game, but the longest time without a red card, which is like 97 games. So fair play to Burnley. They're not as dangerous as they seem. And like, I don't know, they're going to have games like that throughout the season because they're just not like, they're not a team that's, they're not a team that's going to come out and like overflow like oppositions. So when they play well, Chris Wood will play well. They'll be able to create a few key chances and he'll hopefully take one and then they'll defend well and grind out the results. Generally, that's how it goes. They're a bit streaky as well. They'll go on a run of 1-0 wins and then they'll go on a run of like 3-0 defeats or whatever. They haven't started fantastic, but they're like in terms of, I think they've lost their first couple games, but they've played all right for most of it. So I'm not worried about Burnley from a relegation point of view, but it's also they're a team that's like they're not going to finish in the top half of the table. And we don't have to worry about Chris Wood getting into European spots the way they're playing because the one concern there is they haven't really they are linked with a dude from Lyon, a winger who's going to like equal their record transfer fee, which Chris Wood I think is narrowly second on. I think Ben Gibson might have cost a little bit more than him, but we'll see how that goes because up to this point they haven't really signed anyone who's going to improve the first team, and that's always a worry when teams come into the next season because Premier League is one of those rapid competitions where if you're not moving forward, then you're falling behind, whether you're staying still or not. Like that is definitely the worry with Burnley. But like, I mean, they've still got, I don't know. Chris Wood was in good form at the Olympics, and he's looked fit. He hasn't missed a lot of their preseason because of that. But he's come in, he's playing, big minutes, starting every game. So he's looking sharp enough. It's just with the Woodsman, it's always the same thing. You need like a couple key chances to fall his way. He's not necessarily going to create them, but he might finish them. And against Liverpool, that's not something they can necessarily rely upon. But against other teams, should be.
Any offsides so far? The king of the offsides, C. Wood. Any offsides to start this year? I saw they've only scored 1 goal, so
yeah,
not much doing there. But C. Wood scores goals, gets offsides, king of the offsides. What's the update there?
Yeah, and that's an important way of how he plays too, because if he's getting called offside, it means he's playing off the last man, and that means he's in dangerous areas, and that's kind of where he wants to be. Didn't win the Golden Flag last season. I have a suspicion that the fact that his offsides dropped off, I mean, he's still one of the more offsided players in the Premier League, but the fact that they dropped off from the runaway level they had been the 2 years before, I suspect maybe that's a little bit to do with how offside interpretations were going as well, letting the game play a little bit more, because there was one on the weekend where he was definitely offside, set up, I think, Dwight McNeil. Normally it's the other way around, but he set up Dwight McNeil, had run onto a little ball in behind from an offside position, cuts it back, McNeil shoots, and it's like cleared. I think beats the keeper, but cleared off the line. So that didn't get flagged where he was, he was offside, but it didn't get called because of the way they're doing it. Ashley Barnes scored an offside goal early in the second half as well. So I think Burnley is still going to have plenty of offsides. They're definitely a team that when you play direct and when you play the physical style that they play where you're quite close to your center backs and definitely like in the arm wrestle kind of thing, you're going to have a fair share of offside. So he'll be top 10. Don't know if he'll be number 1, but he'll be top 10. Hopefully in goals as well.
Yeah. What's that ratio looking like? Just off the top of your head, Chris Wood goals to offsides of the previous seasons. Is that offsides are astronomically higher than his amount of goals, or they're about even?
Yeah, because you can get offside pretty easily a couple times a game if you're playing in a certain way. I can't. Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly what the numbers were looking like. I think a couple of years ago it was like high 40s, bordering on 50 per season. Last year I think he was more in like the mid 20s, maybe 30, something in that range. So his goals are about 10 to 12 per season. So it's probably more like 3 to 4 like offsides per goal is a nice ratio for him. We say 3. If he's getting a goal per every 3 offsides, he's probably doing all right.
I was just thinking about like those ratio type of stats across the other sports, like tries to try assists, goals to goal assists.
Yeah.
I think in the NBA they do the assist to turnover stuff as well. So
Yeah.
goals to offsides will be interesting because like if your offsides are like 10 offsides to 1 goal, then you're shit. If your offsides are 4 offsides to 1 goal, that's a bit better. And if it's like you do want more offsides because you're pressing the issue, you're pushing the case. You don't want like 1 offside for 1 goal. That's not so. You want to find that balance. That's maybe you have to get onto Opta. Get me onto Opta for a little bit of there.
Get them to sort that out. Well, the other players who are up there in terms of offsides are also generally players like Jamie Vardy is always way up there because he's a runner in behind. There are other players like Harry Kane is a guy who drops deep, so he's not as offside. But he'd still be up there near the top. Aubameyang is always near the top. Like the guys who are up there are the guys who are scoring a lot of goals as well. It's probably not a coincidence. Wood is also, speaking of ratios, he's also very good on the like shots per goal as well. He doesn't get a huge amount of chances, but he's very good at getting those few chances that he does on target and then scoring from them subsequently as well.
Right. We'll move on to the old mate Sarpreet Singh. We are the sons of the Sarpy. We did chat about Sarpreet Singh a fair amount in the podcast on Monday. So if you want to go deep there, check that out. Just some of your stats that you included in the Flying Kiwis yarn. He is tied for the most assists in this league, the second division of the German Bundesliga. He is tied for the most key passes as well. He is apparently, according to Who Scored, he is the highest ranking player in the second division of the German league. And he was named in the team of the week for the second time this season. Sarpreet Singh, what's like the biggest takeaway that you have seen with Sarpreet Singh this season? Obviously, a bit of context. Signed to Bayern Munich, is out on loan, and this loan situation is usually to like build some confidence, get you fit and firing on all cylinders. So just one kind of key takeaway from your observations about Sarpreet Singh. Who's he playing for now? Is he the Regensburg or Schalke?
Yeah, SSV Jan Regensburg.
Regensburg. So he's scoring goals. He's obviously doing a bit of playmaking in the upper midfield role that he might be playing. We'll see what you say there. But just like one key takeaway, like if you're, again, we said on the podcast on Monday that we don't want all of this to be under the context of Bayern Munich. A good way to view this is to take the whole Bayern Munich thing away and just view like, here's a Kiwi footballer, Sarpreet Singh, absolutely dominating in the German second division, which is a lot better than other leagues around the world that we have our Flying Kiwis in. So a word from the wise is to take away the Bayern Munich context. But like just this question here, if you were a Bayern Munich scout, or you are the Flying Kiwis scout for the niche case, just what's one kind of development thing that you've seen with Sarpreet Singh that intrigues you to start this season?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways I could go with that, probably. As to its position, he's playing sort of like they play like kind of 4-2-2-2, similar to what the Phoenix do. So put him on the left side of the dual 10s, if that makes sense. So like the position where, say, Reno Piscopo would normally play, the opposite side to where Ulysses Davia was mostly doing his thing last season while he was there. So he's able to, like, in that sort of position, you're able to both cut in or cut wide, and he's getting wide, swinging and crosses from his left foot. He's also cutting inside and trying to link up with the guys in close. So good areas. It's exactly where he should be playing, really. Like, you want him in that attacking third, getting on the ball a lot, rather than having him a bit deeper where he would often play for the Bayern reserves. In that league, it's not as like you've got a bit more room to be able to push forward and take a few more risks with those kind of things. But I think, yeah, the one thing I would highlight is like it's probably quite easy to say like he's getting goals and assists, he's doing those things, they're winning games. That's all cool. You sort of you don't expect it, but if you're Bayern Munich looking at a dude sent on loan to the division down, you're hoping for that at least. You're at least hoping they're going to have an impact. He's obviously in a hot streak of form at the moment through their first 4 league games, but that may continue, that may not continue. But I think if I was a Bayern scout looking at these like scouting vids and seeing what he's done, I think maybe the thing that would impress me the most is his like physicality. I think like being over there for a couple years, and when he first went over, he's fairly slight. He was young, obviously, as well, so that's part of it. But even last season when he was at Nuremberg on loan, and the same level as he's dominating now, and he was hardly getting the game for them. And there was a lot of talk about like he's not up for the physicality of this league. It's quite rough and tumble, and he wasn't maybe getting like pushed around a bit by some of the older veterans that have sunk to the second tier in Germany, and just weren't going to have it when they see a Bayern whiz kid on loan in the opposition team. They're like, well, first thing I'm going to do is just give him a bit of this. And like that was definitely a narrative, and it was something that Bayern talked about as well when he first got there, was like he was going to have to like get in the gym and strengthen up a bit, because it was obviously something about his game, about his person that was like not a barrier, but just a way he could improve himself. And I think he has. Like, I think you look at the way he's playing, he looks super fit. He's looking real fast. He's looking like wiry strong. And when you take that into consideration along the journey and what Bayern are hoping to see from him, I think that's a huge sign of progress, because we knew he could play. That wasn't up for debate, whether he could play, like how far up he can progress that kind of level of influence and whatever on the ball. Like that was obviously a task for him. Like that's the main goal. But one of the major like ways to do that was to build himself up physically, and it really looks like he's done that. Like even just to look at him, compare a photo of him now to him at the Phoenix, and there's a noticeable difference. He's a couple years older, so that's sort of, some of it's expected, but it goes beyond that. Like he's definitely he's looking dangerous. You don't want to run into him in a dark alley or anything, because Sarpreet Singh might get you.
Bit of creatine, bit of German supplements.
Yeah.
I imagine the Bayern Munich strength and conditioning regime is pretty onto it. Let's just say that. Sports
science, all of those things would be just like through the roof at a club like Bayern. And he'll still be working with them too. Just because he's out on loan doesn't mean he's not got like the club physios and trainers and whatever in his ear, and giving him regimes and all this kind of stuff and telling him what to eat. Like all these things will still be true that he's out on loan.
He's probably got like a burner phone just of fucking Bayern Munich context of encrypted chats and all that shit. One of my favorite Kiwi footballers, Abby Erceg, leads the Kiwi crew in the USA. We've got Abby Erceg playing for the North Carolina Courage. We've got Katie Bowen playing for Kansas City. Abby Erceg's North Carolina Courage had a 4-0 win over Katie Bowen and her Kansas City outfit. We also have Ellie Riley playing for Orlando Pride, which they had a 2-1 loss. And we've got Bill Tuiloma, the Kiwi footballing also. He is playing for Portland, I believe, their wild card. What tickles your fancy the most out of that crop over in the USA? Of course, Aotearoa Kiwi football does have a massive connection with the MLS and the women's competition, the NWSL. They're all about the letters, the USWMT, the USMT, and all that shit. They are the what is America? So it's all alphabet soup. It's FBI, DEA, and all that shit. So take us over to the MLS, where we're dealing with a couple of Kiwis. I couldn't think of a letter thing there, but carry on.
FKs, a couple Flying Kiwis. They, as MLS this season, we got Bill Tuiloma at Portland Timbers, we've got Michael Boxall at Minnesota United, and we've got Elliot Collier at Chicago Fire. All getting like varying degrees of games. Boxall just returned from the injury that he had just before the Olympics, which ruled him out of traveling to Tokyo. They they had a wild week where he didn't play the first game. He was an unused sub on his way back, and then he did play the second game. But both of those games, Minnesota, I think one they drew and one they lost. Both of them they played against 10 men for the entire second half and a good chunk of the first half, and weren't able to win those games. So some frustration for them. They're on a little bit of a slump. I think they've only won one of their last 6 games. And they're still in the playoffs as it stands, but they probably want to string a couple wins together in order to finish, get some better seedings, and not to fall off that sort of race towards the end of the season as well, which is where Portland are, I believe. I think Portland might have slipped out of the top 8, top 9, whatever it is, however they do it there. There's so many teams in the MLS, like more than you'd think, and the league does get a bit stretched like that, and it can be a bit complicated when it comes to playoffs and seedings and buys and first, because it's half trying to be European football and it's half trying to be the NFL, chucking out another acronym, American being what America is. So Boxall would be playing every game where he fit. Hopefully he will be now that he's back. Bill Tuiloma they've got 3 main center backs. There's him, there's a Croatian fella, and there's a French guy. And they kind of have the 3 of them on rotation. Tuiloma did play a little bit. I think he played the second half of their most recent game at right back, after they made a couple subs. So interesting to see. Like I have seen him play fullback before in his early All Whites days. He played a little bit there as well. Interesting to see if that's a strategy they continue with, because that's obviously one more opportunity for him to play, as if he's adding another position to his. It's another like notch in the belt, another feather in the cap. He plays well, but their team is sketchy. They're up and down. They don't quite have the reliable. I don't really know what they're doing, but they don't really have the reliable creative players as they have in the past when they've been very good. I think a couple of those guys, there's a dude Blanco, and there's a Valeri, and 1 or 2 others are a little bit older now maybe, and have had some injuries, and Portland have shown a few creaks from a team that's normally like up near the top of the standings at the end of things. But Bill Tuiloma is playing as much as he ever has. Like his last season or 2, he's been like the dude off the bench, the next man up for the defense. He's getting a lot of starts this season though, so that's very cool to see. Tuiloma and Michael Boxall probably the 2 most prominent Samoan All Whites as well. Just curious that they're both in the same division worldwide. And Elliot Collier is sort of like a bench attacker for Chicago who doesn't score goals. And he's played close to 50 games now, and I think he's got 1 goal. He's come so close. Like the amount of times I've been watching highlights and Collier will come on in the last 5 minutes, but hit the crossbar or big chance which he doesn't quite connect with or something like that. It's been going on for a couple of years where like you get the feeling if he had that like breakout game where he scores a couple, and then he might go on a good run of games and get some confidence up and everything. But as it mostly happens, he's the dude who comes on for the last couple of minutes off the bench. Chicago are not good either, so there's not a lot of playoff context going on there. But those are the 3 fellas. As to the National Women's Soccer League, there's Abby Erceg's North Carolina Courage are coming pretty good now. They had a few stumbles because they lost a few of their key players during the Olympics, and didn't necessarily grind out the results like they would have hoped during that time, but they're back up to second place. They're on a nice little run of form now. Abby Erceg's playing fantastic as always. I noticed as well Abby Dalcamper, who's a starting centre back for the American national team, who had been at Manchester City, has just been released ahead of their next season, so she's coming back to North Carolina to fill out what has like the 2 Abbies was the dominant centre back pairing in this competition over the last couple of years. Nothing to worry about with North Carolina. They'll be competing for a title at the end of things. Orlando Pride rather, they were leading the pack with Ellie Riley earlier on in the season. They're stumbling a bit now. I think maybe that a lot of their early wins were sort of like 1-0s where they were keeping like teams out defensively and snatching a goal on the break, and maybe that like sort of reverted to the mean a little bit in recent times. They've got a new manager as well. Their previous manager left to coach Manchester United, which is a bit of a poison chalice. Spoken as a Manchester United fan at the moment, they're one of many of those top teams, with the exception of Manchester City do it right, Arsenal do it right, although arguably Arsenal's men's team not on the same level as the top six traditionally, but Chelsea as well do it right. But Manchester United, the gap between their men's and women's team not great. Same deal with Spurs. Same deal with Liverpool, whose women's team actually were relegated. Michaela Moore plays for them though. Hopefully have a big season, get promoted again this time. So yeah, Orlando Pride struggling a little bit, not doing the best in terms of recent form. But Ellie Riley plays every week. She's a key player for them. Katie Bowen is a cool one because she's playing for the worst team in the division. They relocated back to Kansas City. They kind of have sucked. They didn't win any of their first 13 games, but she'd been mostly playing as like a fullback, as a right fullback. She got to play in her football phones position week before last. It's like a defensive midfielder and was one of the players of the day as they won their first ever game in Kansas City. As you say, that was chased with a 4-0 defeat by North Carolina Carrots. So you see the difference between like the bottom team and like a team that takes 13 games to win a game and the team that's like second place and on the rise. But Bowen started and played most of the game again in central midfield. So hopefully that continues. And then there's also Rosie White at OL Reign, which should be Seattle Reign, but they got bought by Olympic Lyon. So they're now OL Reign. There's just no... they keep the nickname and keep the ownership thing, but no name of the like city that they actually represent in there for some reason. Again, American sports, who knows? But Rosie White obviously is out with an illness that cost her a chance to go to the Olympics, and she hasn't returned yet. So she's just focusing on more important things at the moment. And there's that's your top flight Flying Kiwis. There's a few in the sort of second tiers, but that's quite a big drop off in standard, I think. So probably don't need to breeze through those. But yeah, Abby Erceg is definitely the one to watch at the moment. That is the most upwardly mobile of any of the teams, and she is the highest performing of any of these players. And that should come as a surprise to exactly nobody.
So that OL Reign thing would be like the UAE Princes buying Man City, and then it's like UAE City, but it's in Manchester, and they wear sky blue.
Yeah, pretty much. Dumb. Exactly the same team. But they do, to be fair, like Leon have been, I think they won like 8 Champions Leagues in a row or something. Up until last year was the first time they didn't win it for a while.
Well, so the women's team, right?
Well, yeah, the women's team. They're like the first of the current wave of a lot of these bigger clubs just putting heaps of money into the women's football. They were the first of them, and so they got to win heaps of Champions Leagues and sign a lot of the best players. And some of those good players are on loan at OL Reign at the moment, and were keeping Rosie White on the bench for a lot of the seasons before she got sick. So they've got a stacked lineup. They just don't win enough. I don't know what's going on there. They should still make the playoffs though.
Right, let's shout out to, we've got Rebecca Stott, who is on the comeback trail from her niggly cancer situation. Kind of amazing just to see her battle through it, no fuss, and get back to Melbourne City. So kia kaha to her, Māori ora. And shout out to the Danish boys. We've got some young lads in the Danish division. Is it Division 1, I think, here?
Yeah.
We've got Cullen McCowett, Elijah Just, and Dalton Wilkins, who are all playing for the same team, FC Helsingør in the Danish Division 1. We put up some highlights of Elijah Just scoring a relative banger, which was fun to see. But the last thing here, Wildcard, is the Kiwis in the Champions League. Something that is probably overlooked is our Kiwi footballers in the Champions League. According to football fans, the Champions League is really fun. According to...
Can confirm.
Cynics of football, the Champions League is just another monstrosity in the world of football. But we do have
two things can be true.
It can be. Hey, same applies to a lot of other sports that we cover as well. What's just like, do you want to do like a roundup, a rapid fire roundup, or do you just want to pick out some key figures that are from Aotearoa playing in the Champions League, men and women? That's the best thing about Flying Kiwis, is that there's a fairly even spread between the Tāne and the Wahine. So big it up to all of them. What's your selection here?
Well, it's sort of key figures and roundup are kind of the same thing in this case. And as far as the male female split goes, it hasn't been even in the Champions League, because I think there's something like 9 or 10 seasons in a row in which there has been a Kiwi woman featuring in the Champions League. You have to go back even further than that for the last time a Kiwi male featured in the Champions League. Really thought we might get one back this year, though. I thought Ryan Thomas's PSV had been in such good form during the early rounds of qualifying and started their league season. They're looking so good, but they got a dud draw against Benfica, who were also a very good team. I think that was a rough one, and then didn't play too great in the first leg. Lost 2-1. Very good in the second half of that leg, coming back from 2 goals down, and probably with their home form, they would have backed themselves regardless. To overturn a 1-goal deficit at home, but if they would have backed themselves before, they certainly would have backed themselves half an hour in when Benfica was sent off. We had a fella sent off down to 10 men for the last hour. This was just this morning as well. This game was on, and I finished watching this, had a cup of tea and a bit of breakfast, and then straight onto the recording. It's still fresh, but it's. I don't know what happened. Benfica played like a proper Portuguese team, just defensively fantastic. A lot of good time wasting as well. Know how to win a free kick. Know how to stay down injured. That's what you do. People talk about it's this cynical, borderline cheating thing. It's do what you can within the rules. So Benfica just with. Oh, mate, Nicolas Otamendi, I thought he was done a couple of years ago once he left Man City, but he's just had another fantastic performance here. And this coming after he was starting games for bloody Argentina in the Copa America as well. Old fella's still got it. And it was his perfect type of game too. It's just getting rough and tumble and getting stuck in. And PSV just I don't know. I didn't think they helped themselves with the way they played. There was a lot of cutting in rather than trying to get in behind and forcing overlaps, and maybe a little bit too slow in the attack and third. But their Israeli striker who's been scoring goals for fun, pretty much with his eyes closed through the season up to this point, missed a bit of a sitter mid-second half and couldn't get that goal that they needed to take it to extra time. Hey,
Tommy Hemed.
When Tommy Hemed was playing for the Phoenix, and when Eran Zahavi is the dude's name, when he was playing with Ryan Thomas, I did do some research to try to see if they'd ever started together for Israel. They have been in squads together. I'm sure they would have, but I couldn't find any recent examples because Tommy Hemed, I don't think, has played an international for 4 years or something like that. But I'm sure they know each other. They're a similar age. Zahavi would be 1 or 2 years younger probably, but yeah, no, he missed a bit of a sitter and they didn't get there. Ryan Thomas came on at the end. He's been coming back from injury, so he's been playing sparingly, but they chucked him on at left back for the last couple minutes in stoppage time. Just one of those, let's get all our attacking players on the field at once and hope that, we chuck him at left back, he can swing in a good cross and maybe we'll get lucky. He picked up a yellow card. I'm not even sure what for, but he didn't swing in a goal scoring cross or anything like that. They drew 0-0. Therefore, they're done. They drop into the Europa League, so it's not out of Europe. They go into the Europa League group stage now. But yeah, I was really hoping the first time since Chris Killen in late 2007, we would have had a Kiwi bloke in the Champions League group stages. But nope, wasn't to be. We'll have to wait another year. They'll just have to do it maybe next time rather than having to go through the tricky qualifying thing. They can just try win their league and topple Ajax and get in directly. It might be a little bit easier. As for the women, though, there is still there were two women who competed in the qualifying stages last week. They've done it weird. They've changed the format of the Women's Champions League, so it's even harder to get into. They're never rather than starting just straight knockouts round of 32, they're now starting with 16 teams, but in a group stage. So I guess they want more of the better teams playing each other more often. I don't know, but that means that qualifying is a little bit trickier. So that streak of however many years in a row, which to be fair was mostly Ali Riley, but CJ Bott did play in a tie for Vålerenga last year. And she was one of the two competing in qualifying this season, where like round one, they split everyone into groups of 4. They'd all go to one location, like the top seed would host it. And then semi-finals and a final, just one-legged games over the course of a week, so you can get through. Olivia Chance was playing for Celtic. They weren't very good. It was the first time Celtic have actually played in European competition. Glasgow City, the dominant women's team in Scotland. So while it's Celtic Rangers and has been for about 100 years, and in Scotland, it's not the case. And then the men's stuff in Scotland is not the case with the women. But Celtic's first ever Champions League excursion, lost to Levante, I think 2-1. It wasn't as close as it sounded. And then they lost to Minsk in extra time 3-2, I believe, in their third and fourth playoff. I don't know why they needed third and fourth playoffs. I guess it's just because you're there, you might as well play. Liv Chance didn't play the first game, came on with about 15 minutes to go in the second game, which then ended up being about a good 45-minute stint because of the extra time. She's only just signed for Celtic as well, so early days there. Their inexperience was definitely a bit of a problem for them in that Champions League excursion, so that didn't last too long. But as I say, Vålerenga were there last season, and they know what they're doing. They were pretty good. Like, they cruised through their first their semi-final. Wasn't a difficult tie. Started a bit poorly, weather wasn't nice, but the second half they rolled them, won I think 5-0. Then they got to play PAOK of Greece in the mini tournament final, and this game, like, the weather was so bad that at one point midway through the first half, they had to delay the game for like half an hour, and the players were saying afterwards they didn't think they'd get back out there. The weather was so bad, but the rain cleared. They managed to sweep off a lot of the excess puddles and stuff. Some of it was still bad. It was still not conditions that lead to a good style of football, but Vålerenga managed to score a deflected goal sort of midway through the second half, I think, and then scored a late penalty as well to get through. So they're still alive. One more round, and then they're into the group stage. This is effectively the round they got to last season. They will play BK Häcken of Sweden, so it's a difficult draw. Not as hard as it could have been, because they could have drawn Juventus, but definitely harder than it perhaps also could have been at the same time. So champions of Norway against the champions of Sweden. CJ Bott did play the last few minutes of that game against PAOK as well, coming on as a sub when they were sort of wasting time and just get to stoppage time. Let's make 3 subs at once and take a minute out of the game. Sweet as. She was one of the ones who came on there. She's coming back from, I don't know for certain, but I'm assuming she's been injured because she hadn't played for a couple games. But yeah, there's two legs in round 2, but like a home leg and an away leg that starts next week, I think. So CJ Bott's our last hope to play Champions League football this season, but it's a decent hope. It was the best hope from the start, and it's still the best hope. Last woman standing, and fingers crossed on that one.
Just quickly, Olivia Chance, did she like get her deal off the back of the Olympics, or was that in motion before the Olympics? And where was she before she was with Celtic?
Before she was with Celtic, she had played in England quite a bit with Everton, with Bristol City, and briefly with Sheffield United. But she left to go play for, I think, because she hadn't really played regularly since she did her ACL before the World Cup. I think leading into the Olympics, she just wanted a heap of games. So she went and played for Brisbane Roar and was excellent in the W League season there. Scored a couple of screamers as well. So I would think the Celtic deal was probably, I don't know, I wouldn't have a clue, but I would imagine it's probably something that was in motion before the Olympics. But definitely, well, she didn't have as good an Olympics campaign as I was hoping. I thought she might have been, not so much for anything she did wrong, more just I didn't think she was quite used in the way. I think you got someone who has a long shot like that, you want to get them on the ball in a central area more often rather than sticking them out in the left wing. But the Ferns, as like, I don't know, when you have no preparation leading into an Olympic campaign, basically you get one friendly game behind closed doors and a couple of your best players aren't even there in time for that. You haven't played a game for like a year. Like, there's only so much you can do. So I don't necessarily want to hold anything against them for that. But like, yeah, I would imagine the Celtic deal was something that was already in process beforehand. She had talked about going back to Europe. So there you go. And that's a solid transfer. Like Celtic, I think last year became the first Scottish team to have a fully professional women's side. They early days in terms of that, like they still haven't toppled the Glasgow City dominance, but this is the year they will hope to do that and win a league title, and hopefully Liv Chance will be a big part of that.
That's what she's there for. She is there to
Absolutely
rip and tear, dominate for the Celtic. So in a Scottish derby context, where Celtic orientated.
Got to be now.
Green and white.
It's funny as well that the men's team is coached by Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, I saw that with
Aussie fella,
mate, what's his name? The Aussie dude who used to be like a star, Rogic. He's playing there as well.
Tom Rogic. Yeah, he's been there for ages, I think.
Little Aussie
assume he's still there.
They
signed it because Postecoglou's come over from Japan and they signed a Japanese striker, and it was like the only decent signing they were able to get. And there was a lot of complaints about their preseason form wasn't good, and they got bundled out of Champions League qualifying. And then this Japanese guy, I think, scored a hat trick in his first Scottish Premier League game. So decent areas. Turns out is a better sign. I think Postecoglou could go all right there, but he's obviously a couple Kiwis short of getting anything close to insightful focus from us. Gonna have to do better than Australians.
Yeah, we're not breaking down any fucking Aussies here.
Absolutely not.
No way. Rightio. Big it up to the Flying Kiwis. You can read all about the Flying Kiwis football at the niche-case.com. The full yarn is live, so check that out. Kia kaha, stay beautiful. Cheers.